They called me the stain of our family, a 32-year-old failed dreamer unfit to attend my sister's engagement. I was banned so my supposed inferiority would not offend the powerful mother-in-law she worshipped. But life has a razor-sharp edge. They could never have guessed that the iron-willed woman ruling that prestigious hospital was preparing to fall to her knees, desperately begging for my multi-million-dollar neuro-research to save her dying husband. Hello, wonderful listeners of Zoe Revenge Stories. Our channel was recently demonetized by YouTube, leaving us without the budget to keep operating. If you enjoy today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking team to cover their living expenses and continue creating amazing stories for you. You can donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on your screen or by clicking the link in the description or the pinned comments of this video. My name is Madeline Bradley, and I am 32 years old. The glaring screen of my mobile phone broke the serene, clinical silence of the laboratory. It was a message from my older sister, Chloe. I swiped open the notification, entirely unsurprised by the venom dripping from her words. Do not even think about showing up to my engagement party this weekend. The text read, I am telling you this for your own good. Madeline, stay away. You will only embarrass the family in front of the elites. I stared at the glowing words, feeling a familiar dull ache in my chest that I had long since learned to compartmentalize and ignore. Before I could even lock the screen, a second message chimed in. Liam's mother is Dr. Evelyn Vance. She is the chief medical officer at Vanguard General Hospital. She is a woman of immense power and influence. She associates exclusively with world-class surgeons and billionaire philanthropists. She will absolutely not accept a fake, unemployed hanger-on like you ruining our meticulously crafted image. My family had always viewed me as a spectacular, irreversible failure. Years ago, I walked away from a highly lucrative corporate business track, abandoning what my parents called a guaranteed path to immense wealth and social status. They endlessly ridiculed my decision to dive into what they mockingly termed unprofitable science fiction. In their narrow eyes, I was merely a stubborn, overgrown child who refused to get a real job, wasting my youth away while Chloe diligently climbed the social ladder to marry into generational wealth. Every holiday dinner was a chorus of disappointed sighs and passive-aggressive remarks about my lack of a corporate title. The reality of my daily existence, however, could not have been further from their petty, ignorant delusions. I was not unemployed, nor was I hiding in some dirty basement tinkering with toys. At that exact moment, I was standing inside the hyper-sterile, temperature-controlled clean room of the Elysium Neuroscience Research Institute. The soft, rhythmic hum of multi-million-dollar computational servers filled the vast space around me. Directly beneath the pristine lens of my advanced electron microscope lay my life's absolute greatest work, a revolutionary brain-computer interface microchip. It was a masterclass in modern neural engineering, designed specifically to bridge the biological gap in severed spinal cords and restore complete motor function to patients suffering from devastating paralysis. I picked up my phone, my sterilized latex gloves squeaking faintly against the smooth glass. I typed a single, dismissive word, fine. There was simply no logical point in arguing with her. I felt absolutely no desire to explain that I actually held dual doctoral degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard University. I had zero interest in justifying my life choices to a family that measured human worth entirely by designer labels, luxury cars, and country club memberships. Furthermore, I certainly did not care to mention the millions of dollars in patent royalties quietly compounding in my private investment portfolios. Let them believe I was a destitute failure. Their blissful ignorance was my ultimate peace of mind. I placed the phone face down on the cold stainless steel counter and turned my full attention back to the complex neural pathways illuminated on my digital monitor. However, my deep concentration was broken just a few minutes later when the heavy pneumatic doors of the laboratory hissed open abruptly. My lead research assistant, Sarah, rushed into the sterile room. She was clutching her secure institutional tablet tightly against her chest, her eyes wide with a mixture of profound shock and sheer, unadulterated excitement. Dr. Bradley, Sarah breathed, her voice echoing slightly against the reinforced glass walls. You need to look at this right now. I stepped away from the microscope, raising a skeptical eyebrow at her frantic energy. What is it, Sarah? Did we find an anomaly in the latest motor response data from the clinical trials? No, it is not the trial data, Sarah replied, practically shoving the heavy tablet into my gloved hands. We just received an urgent, highly classified email through the Institute's secure executive server. It is directly from Dr. Evelyn Vance, the Chief Medical Officer at Vanguard General. I froze for a fraction of a second, the sheer delicious irony of the situation washing over me in a massive wave. Just 10 minutes ago, my sister had weaponized that exact name to make me feel small and worthless. What does Dr. Vance want from our department? I asked, keeping my tone perfectly composed and strictly professional. She is practically begging. Madeline, Sarah said, pointing emphatically at the glowing screen of the tablet. She is delivering the keynote address at the National Medical Conference this weekend. It is widely considered the most important medical speech of the entire year. She is asking for explicit, expedited permission to cite your anonymous clinical trial data on the neural implant. She literally wrote that whoever engineered this technology is the greatest medical mind of the 21st century. I looked down at the glowing text of the email. Evelyn Vance, the terrifying, untouchable matriarch my sister worshipped like a deity, was pleading with a faceless researcher. She was completely, blissfully unaware that the brilliant scientific genius she was groveling to was the very same unemployed sister banned from her own family's engagement party. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. The next 72 hours blurred into a relentless, exhausting marathon of data compilation, algorithmic adjustments, and rigorous peer review formatting. I was practically locked inside my private office at the Institute, preparing for the upcoming National Medical Conference. This was not just another routine academic gathering of stuffy intellectuals. It was the exact, highly anticipated stage where I would officially unveil the final Phase 3 clinical trial results of my interface. For the first time in recorded medical history, our documented patients suffering from severe quadriplegia had successfully bypassed their permanently damaged spinal columns to regain autonomous limb movement. I stared at the dense telemetry logs scrolling rapidly across my secondary digital monitor, feeling the weight of the moment. My mind drifted back to a specific Tuesday morning exactly 3 months ago. Patient 0. A brave former firefighter paralyzed from the neck down after a catastrophic building collapse had looked at a simple plastic cup of water resting on his hospital tray. Through the invisible neural bridge implanted in his cortex, his hand had trembled violently, then lifted, and finally grasped the cup. As he brought it to his lips completely unassisted, a single tear rolled down his scarred cheek. That singular, breathtaking moment was worth infinitely more than every glass-walled corporate boardroom I had walked away from. The jarring, obnoxious ring of my personal cell phone violently shattered my deep focus. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail, preferring the quiet of my sterile sanctuary, but she immediately called again, followed swiftly by my father. When I finally answered the call, their voices carried that deeply familiar tone of exasperated embarrassment and rigid superiority. Madeline, we are calling to make absolutely certain you understand the strict boundaries for this weekend, my mother said, her voice tight with thinly veiled anxiety. Chloe's engagement is being held at a highly exclusive venue downtown. We expect you to stay far, far away from the city center. We simply cannot risk you accidentally running into any of the Vance family's distinguished guests and polluting the atmosphere with your unkempt appearance. Your sister has worked incredibly hard to secure this brilliant match, my father chimed in loudly from the background, his tone thick with condescension. Do not ruin this monumental day by showing up in your cheap clothes, talking about your imaginary scientific hobbies, and making everyone extremely uncomfortable. This is about high society. Madeline, something you clearly know nothing about. I pressed the phone tightly against my ear, my eyes scanning a highly complex line of binary code on my screen. I assure you both, I have absolutely no intention of crashing the party, I replied evenly, my voice devoid of any emotion. Good, my mother snapped quickly. Just stay hidden in your little laboratory. It is much better for everyone if you are out of sight. She hung up without even saying goodbye, leaving a hollow dial tone echoing in my ear. I tossed the phone aside onto the desk, feeling nothing but a profound, liberating sense of relief. Their superficial panic and pathetic snobbery were entirely irrelevant compared to the monumental, world-changing task sitting right in front of me. I turned my attention back to my secure, encrypted inbox, which was currently being flooded by urgent messages from Vanguard General's chief medical officer. Dr. Evelyn Vance had apparently abandoned delegating to her administrative assistants and was now emailing me directly, her tone growing increasingly frantic. Dear Dr. Bradley, her latest lengthy message read, I simply cannot overstate the profound magnitude of your achievement. I have spent 30 long years working in advanced neurology, and your algorithmic approach to complex neural decoding is nothing short of miraculous. It is the absolute pinnacle of modern science. I am formally and urgently requesting a private, face-to-face meeting with you at the conference. I absolutely must speak with the brilliant genius who engineered this technology. She was practically vibrating with professional desperation through the screen, completely and blissfully blind to the glorious reality that the genius she was worshipping was the exact same woman her future daughter-in-law had just banished from the family entirely. I tapped my fingers rhythmically against the polished oak desk. The shifting power dynamic was utterly intoxicating. I replied directly from my encrypted address, agreeing to a brief, highly private meeting in the executive VIP lounge of the conference venue on Saturday evening. I intentionally omitted any personal details or photographs, deciding to keep my identity completely hidden in the shadows until we were standing face to face. I wanted to see the raw, unfiltered attitude of this legendary Iron Woman before she realized she was desperately begging the family stain. As Sarah entered the room to hand me the final printed itinerary for the weekend event, my eyes casually scanned the glossy front cover of the brochure. My breath caught in my throat for a fraction of a second. The National Medical Conference was being hosted at the Grand Atrium Hotel and Resort. It was the most exclusive, fiercely guarded, ultra-luxury hotel complex in the entire state. It was also the exact same venue where my sister was hosting her lavish, high-society engagement party. The sheer statistical improbability of the situation almost made me laugh out loud in the quiet laboratory. Two completely different worlds, separated by immense, towering walls of ego, classism, and academic prestige, were about to violently collide under the exact same crystal chandeliers. I packed my confidential briefing folders into my leather briefcase, a sharp, electric sense of anticipation settling heavily over my shoulders. The opulent stage was set, the arrogant actors were entirely oblivious, and the collision was now utterly unavoidable. The massive crystal chandeliers of the Grand Atrium Hotel cast a warm golden glow over the vast sea of dark designer suits and formal evening gowns filling the main convention hall. It was exactly 7 o'clock in the evening. I bypassed the standard, crowded registration desks, and glided effortlessly through the ornate double doors of the exclusive VIP sector. I was not wearing the cheap, unflattering clothes my parents constantly imagined me in. Instead, I wore a sharply tailored, midnight blue bespoke suit that I had commissioned in Milan, paired with a crisp white silk blouse and severe, black leather stiletto heels. The precise cut of the expensive fabric armored me, projecting an aura of absolute, unyielding authority. As I walked down the central aisle toward the reserved seating area, the low, buzzing hum of thousands of conversations seemed to taper off instinctively. Leading neurosurgeons, billionaire medical investors, and powerful pharmaceutical executives unconsciously stepped aside to let me pass, their eyes drawn intensely to the quiet, terrifying confidence radiating from my every step. They did not know my specific identity yet, but high society possessed an animalistic, ingrained instinct for recognizing true, undeniable power. I gracefully took my seat, just as the immense acoustic system chimed softly. signaling the beginning of the highly anticipated keynote address. The heavy crimson velvet curtains parted, and Dr. Evelyn Vance strode confidently onto the brightly illuminated stage. Even from 30 feet away, I could immediately see exactly why my sister worshipped the ground this woman walked on. Evelyn Vance was a formidable, imposing matriarch. She wore a sharp silver blazer, her hair pulled back into a tight, unforgiving twist. She carried herself with the terrifying arrogance of someone who held the ultimate power of life and death over the city's most elite, untouchable citizens. She gripped the outer edges of the polished wooden podium, her piercing, analytical gaze sweeping slowly over the audience of nearly 3,000 top-tier medical professionals. "Ladies and gentlemen," Evelyn Vance began, her voice echoing with commanding, thunderous resonance through the massive hall. For the past 50 years, the intricate field of advanced neurology has hit a solid, unbreakable wall. We have spent billions of dollars and countless hours trying to map the complex, fragile highways of the human nervous system. We have watched our patients deteriorate, trapped permanently inside failing bodies, and we have been forced to look their grieving families in the eyes and tell them that modern medicine has reached its absolute limit. She paused dramatically, letting the heavy, uncomfortable silence settle over the massive room. "But tonight," she continued, her voice trembling slightly with an intense emotion that sounded shockingly like pure reverence, "tonight, I stand before you on this stage to declare that the unbreakable wall has finally been shattered. What we once dismissed as impossible science fiction is now our breathtaking reality." The gigantic digital screen directly behind her flared to life, displaying high-definition video footage straight from my closely guarded clinical trials. The entire audience gasped collectively as they watched a middle-aged patient, who had been completely paralyzed from the neck down for 7 long years, slowly reach out and firmly grasp a brightly colored block. "This is not just a minor, incremental step forward," Evelyn proclaimed, her tone reaching a passionate fever pitch. "This neural interface technology is the singular, defining miracle of modern medicine. The elegant algorithms, the flawless integration of synthetic microcircuits with organic brain matter. It is a masterstroke of unparalleled, terrifying genius. It boasts a 99% success rate in establishing new, functional neural pathways. The brilliant mind behind this architecture has single-handedly rendered decades of our previous medical textbooks completely obsolete." Evelyn pressed a small button on her presentation remote. The inspiring video of the patient faded to black, replaced by a massive, stark screen. Then, in bold, glowing white letters, a name materialized dramatically across the immense display. Madeline Bradley, Doctor of Philosophy, dual degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard University, lead neuroarchitect at the Elysium Research Institute. "I ask every single person in this room to stand," Evelyn Vance commanded, her voice ringing with absolute, unfiltered awe. "Stand up and give your utmost profound respect to the ultimate architect of tomorrow, Dr. Madeline Bradley." The physical response from the crowd was instantaneous and deafening. 3,000 heavy chairs scraped against the carpeted floor as the entire hall rose quickly to their feet. A massive tidal wave of thunderous applause crashed through the expansive room. I stood up slowly from my plush VIP seat in the second row, calmly buttoning the center button of my midnight blue jacket, as the frantic spotlight operators searched desperately for the guest of honor. I stepped out smoothly into the main central aisle, bathing completely in the bright, blinding light. A collective, audible gasp rippled quickly through the front rows of the audience as they finally connected the youthful, imposing woman in the tailored suit with the monumental, world-changing achievements displayed on the screen. Up on the brightly lit stage, Evelyn Vance physically froze. She stared down at me, her sharp, analytical eyes wide with absolute shock. She clearly had not expected the revolutionary, older genius she had been eagerly emailing to be a woman barely in her early 30s, exuding such terrifying, dominant energy. The arrogant matriarch, who routinely terrorized hospital boards, completely abandoned her rigid composure. She quickly scrambled down the small set of stairs leading off the stage. She literally pushed past two world-renowned neurosurgeons, eagerly and desperately parting the dense crowd to reach me. When she finally stood directly before me, the total transformation in her demeanor was utterly staggering. The imposing, iron-willed titan of Vanguard General Hospital seemed to physically shrink, her proud shoulders hunching slightly as she looked up at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated worship. "Dr. Bradley," Evelyn breathed heavily, her voice dropping to a harsh, desperate whisper over the continuing roar of the standing ovation. She extended both of her hands, grasping my right hand with almost embarrassing, trembling fervor. "It is the greatest, most profound honor of my entire professional career to finally meet you in person. Words simply cannot adequately express my deep admiration for your unparalleled intellect." "Thank you, Dr. Vance," I replied smoothly, my voice cool, detached, and perfectly modulated. I allowed her to hold my hand for exactly 3 seconds before gently but firmly pulling it back, establishing a clear, unbreakable boundary of absolute power. "Your presentation was quite passionate." "It was the absolute, undeniable truth," she insisted quickly, her eyes darting around nervously before leaning in much closer. The confident, commanding speaker from just 2 minutes ago was completely gone, entirely replaced by a desperate, highly vulnerable woman. "Dr. Bradley, please forgive my extreme, unprofessional forwardness, but I must speak with you entirely privately. It is a matter of absolute, critical urgency." I tilted my head slightly, perfectly maintaining my detached, icy facade. "I have a very tight, demanding schedule this evening. Evelyn, what exactly is the nature of this sudden urgency?" Evelyn swallowed hard, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling visibly against her expensive silver blazer. "It is not a professional matter. It is a deeply personal, life-or-death situation. A catastrophic medical crisis within my own immediate family. The conventional treatments have failed completely, offering 0% chance of survival. Your experimental interface is the absolute only theoretical avenue left in the entire world. I know it is highly irregular and completely inappropriate to ask, but my family is hosting a private dinner tonight at 8 o'clock, right here in this hotel, up in the rooftop penthouse suite. Please, I am practically begging you on my knees to join us. I will personally compensate you with absolutely any amount of money you desire just for 1 hour of your precious time." I processed her desperate, pleading words instantly. A private family dinner, 8 o'clock, the rooftop penthouse suite of the Grand Atrium Hotel. The scattered pieces of the puzzle slammed together with violent, poetic perfection. It was not just a random, wealthy family dinner. It was the lavish engagement party for her son, Liam, and my sister, Chloe. The exact same extravagant party my family had viciously banned me from attending just a few days ago to protect their precious, fragile social standing. They were currently up there right now, sipping expensive champagne, desperately trying to impress the very powerful woman who was currently standing directly in front of me, bowing her head in sheer desperation, begging for my presence. A slow, predatory smirk touched the corners of my mouth, my eyes flashing with dangerous amusement. The universe had just casually handed me the ultimate, devastating weapon. "The rooftop penthouse," I repeated softly, savoring the absolute, undeniable victory in the words. I looked deep into Evelyn Vance's pleading, terrified eyes. "You are incredibly in luck. Dr. Vance, my schedule just miraculously opened up. I would be absolutely delighted to attend your family dinner." The private express elevator ascended rapidly, carrying me seamlessly toward the 50th floor of the Grand Atrium Hotel. The heavy brass doors slid open with a soft, melodic chime, revealing the breathtaking opulence of the rooftop penthouse suite. The air inside was thick with the intoxicating scent of imported white orchids and incredibly expensive vintage champagne. Soft, classical string music floated beneath the ambient hum of polite, wealthy conversation. I stepped out of the elevator foyer and into the main ballroom. my bespoke midnight blue suit contrasting sharply with the sea of glittering pastel gowns and standard black tuxedos. I paused near a towering crystal ice sculpture to survey the room. It did not take me long to locate my immediate family. They were performing exactly as I had anticipated. My father was practically bending perfectly in half, aggressively nodding and laughing far too loudly at a bland joke delivered by a silver-haired pharmaceutical magnate. My mother was hovering nervously near the lavish seafood buffet, frantically adjusting her stiff posture every single time a member of the Vance family walked past, her face frozen in a painful, desperate mask of subservience. And then there was Chloe. My older sister was standing directly beneath the grand central chandelier, draped heavily in a custom, $50,000 silk gown that screamed of newly acquired wealth. She was clinging desperately to the arm of her incredibly handsome, somewhat vacant-looking fiancé, Liam Vance. She was currently playing the flawless, high society bride to absolute perfection, flashing her unnervingly bright, manufactured smile at every billionaire and elite surgeon who offered their passing congratulations. I picked up a slender flute of sparkling water from a passing waiter and took a slow, deliberate sip. I waited patiently for the exact moment her eyes would inevitably scan the room and find mine. It took exactly 45 seconds. Chloe turned her head to laugh at something Liam said, and her gaze carelessly swept over the back of the room. Her eyes locked onto my face. The physical reaction was instantaneous and entirely spectacular. Her manufactured smile shattered into a million invisible pieces. The color drained completely from her heavily contoured face, leaving her looking utterly pale and violently sick. Her manicured fingers visibly dug into Liam's tuxedo jacket, causing him to flinch slightly in surprise. She whispered a frantic excuse to her confused fiancé, dropped his arm as if it had suddenly caught fire, and began marching directly toward me. As she crossed the marble floor, her panic rapidly morphed into pure, unadulterated rage. She looked like a woman who was actively watching her entire carefully constructed universe collapse. When she finally reached me, she leaned in dangerously close, her voice a harsh, venomous hiss designed entirely to avoid drawing the attention of the surrounding elites. "What in the absolute hell are you doing here? Madeline?" Chloe demanded, her chest heaving rapidly with barely contained fury. "I sent you a very clear, explicit message. I specifically forbade you from coming anywhere near this hotel. Are you actually insane? Or are you just so pathetically jealous of my success that you decided to ruin the most important night of my entire life?" I looked down at her, maintaining an expression of absolute terrifying boredom. "Good evening to you too, Chloe. The caviar looks incredibly fresh tonight." "Do not play your stupid games with me," she hissed violently, her eyes darting around the room in absolute terror, silently praying that none of the wealthy guests had noticed her interacting with me. "You do not belong here. You are wearing a ridiculous business suit to a black tie engagement gala. You are a complete embarrassment. If Liam's mother, Dr. Evelyn Vance, sees you standing here looking like a miserable, unemployed corporate dropout, she will cancel this wedding immediately. You are a permanent stain on this family, and I will not let you destroy my future." "I assure you, Chloe," I replied smoothly, my voice cold and dangerously calm. "Dr. Vance and I are already incredibly well acquainted." Chloe let out a sharp, breathless scoff of pure disbelief. "You are completely delusional. You have never met a woman of her supreme caliber in your entire pathetic life. I am done dealing with your jealous insanity." Chloe frantically raised her hand and snapped her fingers sharply at a pair of massive, broad-shouldered security guards standing near the balcony doors. The two men in dark, imposing suits immediately jogged over, their expressions hardened and highly professional. "This woman is an uninvited trespasser," Chloe ordered the guards, her voice trembling slightly with aggressive authority. "She has absolutely no business being at this highly exclusive event. She is mentally unstable and is actively trying to harass my family. I want you to grab her and physically escort her out of the building right this second. Do it quietly, before she causes a massive scene and embarrasses everyone." The larger of the two guards nodded sternly. He reached out his thick, muscular hand, fully intending to grab my shoulder and force me toward the service elevators. I did not flinch. I did not move a single muscle. I simply stood my ground, waiting for the inevitable, spectacular explosion. "Take your hands off of her immediately." The commanding, thunderous voice sliced through the ambient noise of the ballroom like a razor-sharp surgical scalpel. The security guard froze instantly, his hand hovering just 2 inches from my shoulder. Chloe whipped her head around, her eyes widening in absolute horror. Dr. Evelyn Vance was storming across the marble floor. The imposing matriarch of the Vance family was practically radiating pure, unadulterated fury. She completely ignored the startled gasps of the wealthy guests parting rapidly to let her through. Evelyn reached our small group and forcefully shoved the massive security guard backward with surprising physical strength. "What is the meaning of this absolute outrage?" Evelyn demanded loudly, her sharp gaze burning holes directly into the terrified guard. "I apologize. Dr. Vance," the guard stammered quickly, bowing his head in total submission. "Miss Chloe instructed us to remove this uninvited woman from the premises." Evelyn slowly turned her terrifying, furious gaze toward Chloe. My sister physically shrank under the intense scrutiny, nervously twisting her expensive diamond engagement ring. "Evelyn, please do not be upset," Chloe rushed to explain, her voice taking on a sickeningly sweet, pleading tone. "This woman is just a deeply disturbed, unemployed relative of mine. She is completely obsessed with ruining my happiness. She has no money, no social standing, and absolutely no right to breathe the same air as your distinguished guests. I was just trying to protect our family's flawless reputation by throwing her out." Evelyn Vance stared at Chloe for 5 agonizingly long seconds. The silence radiating from the matriarch was deafening, heavy with a mixture of absolute disgust and complete disbelief. Then, Evelyn deliberately turned her back on my sister. She faced the crowded ballroom, raised her chin, and spoke in a booming, commanding voice that demanded the immediate attention of every single billionaire, surgeon, and socialite in the expansive room. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I please have your complete and undivided attention," Evelyn announced proudly. The string quartet stopped playing instantly. 200 extremely powerful guests turned silently to face us. "There has been a monumental, unforgivable misunderstanding here tonight. I would like to formally and publicly correct it." Evelyn reached out and gently placed her hand on my arm, treating me with the delicate reverence one might reserve for royalty. "I want to introduce you all to the absolute savior of modern medicine," Evelyn declared, her voice ringing with undeniable pride. "This brilliant woman is Dr. Madeline Bradley. She is the lead neuroarchitect at the Elysium Research Institute, the sole creator of the revolutionary neural implant technology, and unconditionally, the single most important guest of honor our family has ever had the profound privilege of hosting." A collective wave of astonished murmurs washed instantly over the incredibly wealthy crowd, but the reaction from my own blood relatives was infinitely more entertaining. My mother dropped her glass of champagne. It shattered violently against the marble floor, the loud crash echoing through the silent room. My father's jaw actually dropped open, his face turning an unhealthy shade of grayish purple. They stood absolutely paralyzed, staring in completely dumbfounded horror as the daughter they had violently discarded as a total failure was publicly elevated to the status of a living god by the very woman they desperately worshipped. But Chloe's reaction was the true masterpiece. Her knees visibly buckled. She swayed dangerously on her high heels, looking as though she had been forcefully struck by a fast-moving train. "Wait," Liam Vance said, stepping forward from the crowd, his brow furrowed in deep, utter confusion. He looked back and forth between his mother and my sister. "Mother, did you just say her name is Dr. Bradley Chloe? Is this your younger sister?" "The one you repeatedly told me was a lazy, uneducated parasite who refused to get a real job and leached entirely off of your parents." The entire ballroom fell deathly silent. Every single eye in the room suddenly snapped directly to Chloe. Evelyn Vance slowly turned her head back to look at her future daughter-in-law. The profound respect she had just shown me instantly morphed into pure, unadulterated revulsion. "You told my son that Dr. Madeline Bradley, the greatest scientific genius of our entire generation, was an unemployed parasite." Chloe opened her mouth to speak, but only a pathetic, suffocated squeak escaped her throat. The heavy, suffocating layers of her deceit, her manufactured superiority, and her vicious lies were violently ripped away in front of the most powerful people in the city. She stood there entirely exposed, trembling violently under the crushing weight of her own absolute humiliation, completely and utterly destroyed by the very sister she had tried to erase. The suffocating silence in the ballroom was suddenly broken by Liam Vance. He completely ignored the pathetic, trembling figure of his fiancée standing beside him. His eyes, previously vacant and polite, were now practically glowing with raw, unadulterated greed. He had just connected the dots. The Elysium Research Institute was not just a scientific marvel, it was an untapped gold mine. Liam confidently adjusted his silk tie and took a step toward me, wearing the slick, predatory smile of a venture capitalist who believed he had just spotted an easy target. "Dr. Bradley," Liam said, his voice dripping with sudden, intense charisma. "I must apologize for my absolute ignorance. I manage a private equity firm with over $800 million in active assets. The commercial application of your neural interface is staggering. If you are currently seeking Series A funding or a strategic buyout, my firm would be highly interested in acquiring a majority stake. We could easily push your company to a $2 billion initial public offering within 36 months. I looked at him, feeling a deep, rising sense of disgust. My family had mocked me for abandoning business, yet here was the pinnacle of their high society dream, practically salivating over the wealth I had secretly built. "You want to acquire a majority stake," I repeated slowly, letting a cold, mocking laugh escape my lips. "Liam, your private equity firm specializes in aggressive, leveraged buyouts of failing retail chains. You have absolutely zero experience in medical technology or federal regulatory compliance. Furthermore, my company is already privately valued at over $4 billion. I rejected a cash offer of $500 million from a global pharmaceutical giant just last Tuesday because I refuse to let predatory capitalists monopolize a life-saving medical necessity. I do not need your capital. I do not need your management. And I certainly do not need your hypocritical business advice. You do not have the liquidity, the intellect, or the moral high ground to even sit at my negotiating table." Liam's slick smile completely vanished. His face flushed a deep, angry crimson as the surrounding billionaires whispered and chuckled softly at his brutal, highly technical public humiliation. Before Liam could attempt to salvage his shattered ego, Evelyn Vance stepped forcefully between us. She grabbed my forearm, her grip surprisingly tight and desperate. "Enough of this," Evelyn commanded fiercely, glaring at her son. She turned her desperate eyes back to me. "Dr. Bradley, please, we cannot discuss this here. Come with me right now." Evelyn did not wait for my response. She practically dragged me away from the stunned crowd, leading me swiftly down a long, dimly lit mahogany corridor that branched off from the main ballroom. We reached a heavy, soundproofed executive office at the far end of the hall. She pushed me inside, slammed the heavy oak door shut behind us, and immediately twisted the brass deadbolt lock. The loud click echoed sharply in the sudden, isolated silence. Then, the absolute unthinkable happened. The terrifying, iron-willed matriarch who controlled the city's largest medical empire completely collapsed. Evelyn leaned heavily against the polished oak door, her proud shoulders shaking violently. She covered her face with both of her hands, and a harsh, guttural sob ripped through her throat. She cried loudly, abandoning every single ounce of her legendary composure. She was no longer a powerful hospital director. She was just a terrified, broken woman staring directly into the abyss. "Dr. Vance," I said quietly, maintaining my professional distance but dropping the icy hostility. "What is going on?" Evelyn slowly lowered her hands. Her meticulous makeup was ruined, dark streaks of mascara running down her pale cheeks. "It is my husband," she whispered, her voice cracking painfully. "Arthur, the father of my children, he is dying. Madeline, he is dying right now, and I am entirely powerless to stop it." She stumbled toward a leather armchair and fell into it, gripping the armrests until her knuckles turned completely white. 6 months ago, Arthur was diagnosed with a highly aggressive, atypical variant of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It is attacking his central nervous system at an unprecedented, terrifying speed. Vanguard. General has the finest neurologists on the entire planet. We have spent tens of millions of dollars flying in experimental drugs from Europe and Asia. Nothing works. His motor neurons are dying off rapidly. He lost the ability to walk last week. He lost the ability to swallow solid food. The top specialists give him roughly 3 to 4 months before the paralysis reaches his diaphragm, and he completely suffocates in his own bed. I stood perfectly still, my brilliant medical mind instantly processing the horrific, brutal reality of her words. This disease was a definitive death sentence. It was a vicious, relentless thief that slowly trapped a perfectly healthy mind inside a decaying, useless body. "My technology," I stated calmly, the heavy realization dawning on me. "You do not just want to cite my research, you want to surgically implant the interface into your husband. It is the only theoretical hope left on this earth," Evelyn cried desperately, leaning forward. "Your microchip bypasses the dying organic motor cortex entirely. If we can bridge his brain directly to a synthetic neural network, we can connect him to automated respiratory systems and mechanical mobility suits. We can keep his lungs pumping. We can save his life. I have read every single page of your clinical trial data. You are the only surgeon alive who can successfully execute the precise algorithmic calibration required for the brain-stem integration." Suddenly, a loud, frantic scuffling noise came from the hallway right outside the office. The heavy brass door handle rattled violently. Evelyn jumped up and unlocked the door. Chloe practically fell into the room, followed closely by our pale, hyperventilating parents. They had completely abandoned the lavish party to press their ears against the heavy oak wood. They had heard absolutely everything. The horrifying realization of the situation was painted clearly across their terrified faces. The invincible Vance family, the absolute zenith of their social climbing ambitions, was teetering on the absolute brink of total collapse. If Arthur Vance died, the family would plunge into deep, chaotic mourning. The extravagant, high-society wedding would be postponed indefinitely, or perhaps entirely canceled, destroying Chloe's one and only ticket to generational wealth. And the absolute sole arbiter of that wealth, the only person who held the power to save the billionaire patriarch, was the very sister she had spent her entire life viciously tormenting. Chloe stared at me, her eyes wide with a manic, unhinged terror. The expensive silk gown suddenly looked like a cheap rag on her trembling body. She took 3 slow steps toward me, her lower lip quivering uncontrollably. Then she collapsed. Chloe fell hard onto her knees, the heavy silk fabric pooling around her on the expensive Persian rug. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her carefully contoured face, completely stripping away 32 years of blinding arrogance and vicious cruelty. "Madeline," Chloe sobbed pathetically, clasping her trembling hands together in front of her chest. "Please, I am begging you. You have to save him. If Arthur dies, Liam will cancel the wedding. I will lose absolutely everything. I will be ruined. Please, Madeline, I will do anything you want. I will apologize for every terrible thing I have ever said to you. Just please, do not let my wedding be canceled. Save my future father-in-law." My mother and father stood frozen in the doorway, staring in absolute, horrified silence as their golden child knelt on the floor, groveling in pure desperation at the feet of the family stain. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had completely, violently shattered, leaving me standing alone at the absolute pinnacle of their ruined world. I stared down at my sister. Chloe was still kneeling on the expensive Persian rug, clutching her designer silk dress, her tear-streaked face twisted in a pathetic mask of sheer desperation. The sight did not bring me any triumphant joy. It only brought a profound, heavy sense of pity. "Get up, Chloe," I said, my voice completely devoid of any warmth or familial affection. I do not practice medicine to salvage a ridiculous, superficial wedding, and I absolutely do not perform experimental, life-saving neurosurgery to earn the cheap, pathetic validation of a family that has spent my entire adult life treating me like an embarrassing burden. Your fragile social status is entirely irrelevant to me. I turned my back on my trembling sister and my horrified parents, completely dismissing their existence. I locked my eyes directly onto Evelyn Vance, shifting instantly back into the commanding, clinical persona of a lead neuroarchitect. "Dr. Vance," I stated with absolute, unyielding authority, "I will agree to take your husband as my patient. However, I am doing this strictly as an independent medical professional. I will personally take full custody of his medical files first thing tomorrow morning. My laboratory will dictate the precise surgical timeline, and my medical authority over his treatment protocol will be absolute and utterly unquestioned. You will not interfere." Evelyn Vance let out a shaky, overwhelming breath of relief. She nodded frantically, fresh tears welling in her sharp eyes. "Yes, of course," Evelyn replied, her voice trembling with immense, profound gratitude. "You will have absolute authority. Dr. Bradley, whatever you need, the entire Vanguard Hospital network is yours." Then, Evelyn slowly turned her gaze back toward the floor. The profound gratitude in her eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, lethal contempt as she looked down at Chloe. "As for you," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with sheer, unadulterated disgust, "I am going to have a very long, very serious conversation with my son tonight regarding his future. Your character is utterly repulsive. The sheer cruelty you showed to your own sister, the brilliant woman who is now stepping in to save my family, is entirely unforgivable. I will seriously reconsider allowing the Vance name to be tied to such deceitful, toxic people." A sharp, agonizing wail violently ripped from Chloe's throat. My parents covered their faces, physically shrinking against the mahogany wall as the crushing weight of ultimate humiliation and profound regret finally broke them completely. I did not stay to watch them weep. I simply adjusted my midnight blue suit jacket, unlocked the heavy brass door, and walked out of the office. As I stepped back into the lavish ballroom and headed toward the main elevators, the surrounding sea of billionaires and elite surgeons instantly parted for me. They lowered their heads in quiet, respectful reverence as I passed. I left the luxury hotel behind, abandoning my blood relatives to drown in the absolute ruin of their own making. The very next morning, at exactly 6 o'clock, I stood inside the sterile, hyper-quiet environment of my laboratory. I was meticulously reviewing the complex surgical imaging files for Arthur Vance, preparing my mind for the monumental operation ahead. I took a brief moment to step away from the glowing monitors and look out through the massive glass windows at the sprawling city skyline glowing brightly under the early morning sun. A quiet, profound sense of peace washed over my entire soul. I finally realized that the most perfect, absolute revenge was never about shouting, fighting, or maliciously trampling over the people who had wronged you. The ultimate revenge was simply allowing the people who once fiercely looked down on you to live the rest of their lives in complete, undeniable dependence, forever forced to look up at you from the bottom of a very deep abyss. Thank you so very much to all of our wonderful listeners for staying with me until the very end of this journey. Where in the world are you listening to this story from today? Please let us know in the comments below. If you found today's story engaging and satisfying, please consider helping our channel with a donation of just $1. You can easily do this by scanning the PayPal QR code currently on your screen, or by using the PayPal link provided in the video description and pinned comment. Your generous support goes directly to paying our hardworking team. helping them feed their families and allowing us to continue creating high-quality, exciting stories for you every single week. Stay strong, and always remember your true worth.